Hello and welcome to today's Pharma Forum webinar, this time brought to you in association with the National Institute for Health and Care Research in the UK, also known as the NIHR. Today we'll be discussing the evolution of clinical research, embracing new delivery models in the UK. I'm joined by a fantastic team of experts who are going to be discussing this subject throughout the webinar. We have Jo Henry, who's matron, NIHR Clinical Research Network, Greater Manchester. Jamie Calderwell, who's lead nurse for the Agile and Direct Delivery teams, Yorkshire and Humber Clinical Research Network. Kirsty Gladys, who's senior research nurse manager for the LCRN 6. And Tanuja Weerasinghe, who's also known as Jay, who's lead research nurse in Kent, Surrey and Sussex Clinical Research Network. Now, if you don't know who the NIHR, don't worry, we've got you covered. The NIHR is funded by the UK government to help improve the health and wealth of the nation through research, as well as funding research and investing in world-class research expertise and facilities. The NIHR also partners with funders of research, including the life science industry, to support and drive science and technology innovations into tangible benefits for patients and the economy. Before we get started into our big discussion today, we do want to hear from you. So we have a little poll question, which is going to be coming up in a moment. You'll be able to see it below the video on your screen. We want to know, before we get into the discussion, to what extent you think clinical research delivery has changed in the UK in the last 10 years. Do you think it hasn't changed at all? No, you haven't seen any evolution. You've seen some evolution, but we need to do more. Significant evolution, but innovation has plateaued. Or continuously, you think innovation is ongoing. Now, while we wait for those responses to come in, please do get your responses in. There are a few housekeeping rules that we need to go over. First and foremost, we want to hear from you. There is another question box underneath your screen where you'll be seeing that poll at the moment, where you can get your questions in for the panel members today. As we go through, send in your questions. We'll do our best to answer those at the end of the session. We have a dedicated question and answer session, so we have plenty of time for you. You can also follow along with today's discussion over on Twitter, where you can follow PP Webinar, where our fantastic editorial team will be live tweeting along for today's discussion. We can also share with you, the full recording towards the end of the day, where we will have it all on demand for you to watch whenever you like. If you miss anything or want to revisit any of the discussion today, you can do. Okay, so we have responses in, and it's a good sign. So we have only 1% say they haven't seen any evolution in the last 10 years. 38% say we've seen some evolution, but we need to do more. 19% say they've seen significant evolution, but innovation has now plateaued. And 41% say they've seen continuous innovation. That's quite positive. But we're looking at how it's evolving now. So let's take a look at an overview of how the clinical research landscape has evolved. Jamie, can you give us a little bit of background as to how we got to where we are and how we're changing now?
Sure. So we've seen, I suppose, in the last few years, a greater awareness from the public around research and the need to participate in research. And we've seen that through the sign-ups to the Be Part of Research website. That's been the biggest one. A bigger emphasis on inclusion as well. So not just sort of your typical demographics or historical demographics, but more in terms of inclusion encompassing everyone. So I shared a fact the other day around the average reading age in the UK is 8 years old. And so some of that information that we're giving, I think, needs to be given in a different way, and a way that's accessible to everyone in the language that they speak. Sometimes literal, but other ways in terms of having people from that community deliver some of that information. A lot of what we're seeing as the agile teams and the direct delivery teams for the network is that we're becoming less site-centric. And what I mean by that is that often studies are run in a single location. It's a clinical delivery team, research team, and participants are expected to come to them. And what we're seeing now is a shift towards a more community-based approach, opening that up to a bigger population. There's a real reluctance from some of our participants and some of our demographics that don't want to come to those clinical locations. Research, it feels almost it needs to be at their convenience. And if they're being expected to do extra on top of all the busy day-to-day pressures that they have, there's just that I can't, sort of an attitude of I can't take anything more on. We talked as well around there's a greater need for the sort of real life scientific evidence. And we shared a wonderful example, didn't we, where there was a genetic study that found that 50% of the South Asian population who were tested didn't metabolize clopidogrel, which is given to those who've had heart attacks as a way to prevent heart attacks. So looking more at that personalized medicine as well. And yeah, I think we need to think slightly differently in our approach, the way we identify participants for research, the information we present to them, and really open it up and go to where the people are.
And we're talking about how the landscape has evolved and understanding the need to take maybe clinical research outside of the traditional setting. But what has been the main driver behind that change? Because as you mentioned, for a very long time, research was very much confined to the clinical setting. So what's been the main driver of that research? Jo, do you have any insights there?
Yeah, so it was really the pandemic was the catalyst for this change. So research delivery kind of transformed during COVID. A lot of trials had to look at different methods, so using remote methods of trial delivery. We had to look at different settings. So as Jamie was saying, people were reluctant to go to hospital at that time. So for instance, there was vaccine studies that were delivered in local rugby clubs or leisure centres or community centres. We did surveillance studies that were recruiting children in school and residents in care homes. So we really had to think outside the box in order to meet all these urgent public health studies. And now really it's only natural that people want that choice in healthcare about where they get healthcare, who they receive the healthcare from. So it's only natural then that research needs to come up to those standards as well. During the pandemic, some of the studies we did, like for instance, one of my first experiences kind of working differently was we did a drive-through study at a local football stadium in the car park where we were trialling lateral flow devices for the first time ever with real COVID positive people. And that study ended up, the results came back so quickly because we'd set everything up really quickly. And within 40 days, the lateral flow test that we all ended up using all the time were rolled out in 40 days. So the pandemic really showed us that we can work smarter, more efficiently. We can still get that high quality data, and people of underserved groups. So the pandemic also highlighted obviously the significant health inequalities that we have in this country. So we were able to demonstrate that we could go and recruit these people into research studies. And so we have to capitalise on that and maintain that momentum. We've been able to identify who our underserved communities are, and we've now made them a priority.
But of course, now we're no longer in that COVID bubble where there were just, now that you've mentioned it, so many car park settings for lateral flow tests, for vaccinations. It really was a car park time. Now that we're sort of back in more clinical settings, that we're back to the new normal, as it is often called, how are we adapting to the changes in priorities?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a whole global movement to make research more inclusive based on the pandemic and make research more accessible. And the UK is really leading in this space at the moment, and we're looking to partnerships in order to achieve that. And the way the NIHR has been responding in various ways, so there's now a lot more initiatives focusing on equality, diversity and inclusion. They have funded a lot of different infrastructure, which we'll talk about later on. We've been working with more partners to increase accessibility to research, so things like what Jamie was talking about in terms of using different language or using audio tools and things for communicating with patients or participants. To doing things like manufacturing research vans so that we can take research out into the community. So we've really kind of demonstrated, innovation during this. But I think one of the most significant things that the NIHR have done is the establishment of the direct delivery teams.
And you mentioned the direct delivery teams. What is that? What is that? The direct delivery team initiative, for those who may not know?
Yeah, so the NIHR received funding for the Department of Health and Social Care to set up direct delivery teams. So there are 15 clinical research networks in England, and all 15 now have a direct delivery team, or a DDT. And the whole purpose of these DDTs is to establish more research in non-NHS settings. So we all have an agile workforce. So that's made up of nurses, practitioners, there's non-clinical staff such as trial admin or engagement officers, and we're all focused on taking research into non-NHS settings and engaging with more research naive settings and sites as well. So we're also quite focused on matching research to clinical need, because we need to make sure that research is relevant for the people that we're serving. So we do a lot of engagement with local communities. We find out what sort of research they would like to see, basically ensuring that the people who need the research get access to research opportunities, and access which is convenient for them and which meets their needs. So the whole concept of agile delivery is about us being flexible, being creative, responsive, adaptive, and we're really kind of pathfinders, because we've been navigating these different settings where the processes and the infrastructure didn't previously exist.
You mentioned pathfinders there. How does that differ from the norm of research delivery?
Well, we've engaged with all these different settings where they've maybe had no previous experience in research, so we've had to kind of negotiate their landscapes, negotiate their environments, and figure out how we can make the research kind of fit and work it in that space and work with their service users or their clients or their patients. So we've had a lot of different challenges. We've had to work in lots of different ways. We've had to share, learning nationally. So we have a national DDT leadership group, and in that we share all of our challenges and try and find solutions. So it's really been a lot of problem solving and troubleshooting.
And looking at that in a practical way, it's one thing to talk about the theory of it. How do you work differently to achieve more agile delivery? Jay, if we come to you first, how does this work in practice?
It works quite well in the out of hospital setting, because there's so much opportunities. What we're trying to do is giving that time and space and take those research opportunities if you're outside of the hospital. So, and like Jamie said earlier, this actually helps us to reach out to a diverse set of populations, which helps to get a variety of people who can actually take part in the study. I don't know if you can we share some examples. I know we have been looking into a few. One of them was one of the school set of studies we're doing called ELSA. Those children who's taking part in that project wouldn't have otherwise had a diabetes screening, because they don't actually have diabetes. The reason why they're doing it is because, in one way, they want to take part in research and help someone in the future, and also it allows them to look at their risk levels. and that is happening outside of the hospital setting. So that's why it's quite easy, because there are so much opportunities outside the hospital settings to run research.
And we talk about outside of the hospital setting. You mentioned schools there. What other areas have you been to, or can we go to find these underserved communities? And can we elaborate on what we mean when we talk about underserved communities as well?
Different settings we cover, especially in Kent, Surrey and Sussex region. We have care homes, hospices, schools, local authorities, GP surgeries, screening centres. We are currently looking at hoarder centres, a lot of charity sector providers. So we are able to work with a lot of non-NHS or out of hospital setting, wider healthcare setting. It's kind of like looking at different sectors, but very much meaning the same thing. Everything means outside of hospital setting. So any type of organization who would like to run any of these projects, we are able to go and provide our support so they can deliver these projects. What we mean by underserved communities, they are the communities normally wouldn't be able to take part in the studies for various reasons. Maybe they're not coming to healthcare organizations regularly, or they don't have direct inroads into healthcare. So what we try to do is we try to go to them. So I'm personally, I'm a South Asian community member, and I know quite a lot of my family members and who I know don't take part in research when you compare with the majority of the population. So where do they go to? That could be places they go for worshipping. It could be places where they go to do the shopping, or GP surgeries and screening centres. We would like to take those opportunities where the people are, whatever those places are. Quite a lot of organizations would like to run these projects. Unfortunately, one of the problems is they don't have the capacity, or they don't have the time. So what we provide from the direct delivery team and research delivery teams is to provide the support to deliver projects, as well as expertise with good and best practice, because we would like to protect our participants and the projects and the data we collect.
And Kirsty, I'd love to hear from you as well. Do you have any examples of how you work differently?
Yes, hiya. So in Wessex, we have actually a research bus that we have delivered the IDX2 trial on. And IDX is a study that is looking at early diagnostics for lung cancer or disease. So the team park the bus up outside next to the CT scanner, wherever that may be. So in the past year, it's been in a leisure centre, in a supermarket, on a sort of a community hospital site. So we've been lucky enough to park up alongside them and work with that team, and actually invite participants onto the trial there and then, and be able to take a nasal swab and some bloods, and be able to sort of send those off and get them analysed. And actually some sort of preliminary results have sort of unofficially come through that is highlighted that that's been really successful, and hence there's going to be an IDX2 trial that's going to be coming out in the summer. So we're looking to make partnerships with more supermarkets and take the research to where people are, to make sure that we're covering that demographic and people aren't missing out.
And surely having those sites and taking, as you said, the research to the people, you will then, by word of mouth, encourage other people to take part who may not have known about the research project, or maybe, as you said, wouldn't have had the chance or the opportunity to take part.
Absolutely. And actually in the summer, we wanted to build upon that, and we took the bus to a local music festival and sort of spread the message of, this is who we are, this is who, we represent, and how we want everybody to get involved, and why it's important, and why everybody should should have that opportunity and sort of contribute to society, but also something that's meaningful for them and their community. And that was really great. That was sort of publicised locally with our local news, and it was really great. I think we're getting the message out, which is lovely.
And we've talked a little bit about examples of how you're using sort of agile delivery approaches. How are you ensuring delivery, and have you had any challenges that you've had to overcome? Jamie, if I come to you with that one.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges, I think, from our point of view, is access. So I'm a bit of a governance and regulation nerd. So the things around GDPR and our own information governance were one of the biggest barriers to support some of our primary care sites, where they're so in the NHS, we're classed as part of the care team, and therefore we can have access to patient information and their notes and their clinical documentation. Outside of those settings, we're not classed as the care team or staff for a community centre, for instance, or a children's centre, or any of that stuff. So we had to look at a way of managing that, and also then conforming with GDPR and information governance. So we looked at honorary contracts as a process for certainly within Yorkshire and Humber, for our GP practices, and that enables us to help them with searches, so to find those potential participants, and we're almost then become a sort of a member of that practice. And that then opens up the sort of floodgates, if you like, to us being able to offer them, different studies to be delivered within their practice, whereas previously it's them coming to us all the time. So we're able to take things to them. And as we mentioned, we have the DDT leaders group, and so that process and those documentation were shared, and we discussed it. And from that, we got some other bits that I think Jay will talk about later. So that's one way. And also then we had to look at privacy statements and things like that to make sure that they were fit for purpose in those practices. I think a lot of it as well is engaging with different community leaders to make sure that, again, we're being introduced to those communities by somebody from that community, and that helps tremendously to support it. And I think, we've mentioned it a lot, going to where people are makes it hugely convenient for people. And where we can't, then we look at what else we can do for that. So if we physically can't get to them to do a home visit or something, can we meet them somewhere? Can we meet them in their local GP surgery, at a community centre, somewhere that isn't, 45-minute drive into a hospital setting where they've got to pay for parking, which is expensive, and all of those kind of things. So all of those barriers and things like that. So that's kind of the main way that we do it.
And you mentioned a couple of barriers there. You would also surely be able to extend to weekends and sort of after work opportunities as well. So is there that timing aspect of trying to engage patients when they are most available?
Yeah, sure. We've had to really think about those kind of elements. So when we're looking at a study and looking whether or not we can support it, like you said, how do we deliver it? We're running one with children's centres at the moment, and they are, some of them are preschool, but it can go up to school-aged children as well. So trying to fit seeing those parents and children around their school. Sort of school day means that our staff are having to be sort of flexible around their hours of working, so they may start later and go into the evening, and vice versa. They may start early and finish earlier in the afternoon to capture people before they're doing the school run, and all of those. Weekend is a big one as well, but again, it's about finding that middle ground between not wanting to take up somebody's free time, and I'm meaning the participants, not ours. You don't want the kind of research to be seen as something in addition. It's got to fit around their lifestyle and their kind of demands and things.
And you mentioned governance. You mentioned being a bit of a governance nerd. Introducing new processes will obviously take a bit of time, and it's quite a complex task. So what kind of processes have you had to put in place to deliver this research? Jay, if we can ask you a little bit, you mentioned letters of assurance in our pre-call. Can you talk us through a little bit about that?
Sure. There are various ways of getting access to out-of-hospital settings. Like Jamie said, there are honorary contracts, letters of accesses, research passports. One thing is clear, when it's an outside of hospital setting, we want to make it easier for them to have our staff in their organization. If there's anything we can do to cut down the red tape and help their process, then everyone seems to be happy about it. So there is this process called Universal Letter of Assurance, which is very focused on observational studies, non-interventional studies. Because all of our DDT, direct delivery team members, are NHS contract holders, we have our pre-engagement checks done already through the NHS. So what we are going to do is, through this universal letter of assurance process, giving all of that human resources related information, which another HR or human resources in an outside hospital setting will need. So we give all of that information as a pack and say this was done in the NHS and here are the details. So majority of the times and the sites and organizations we worked with, they were able to use that pack as it is, which actually helped our direct delivery team members to go and start delivering the project in a timely manner. If for some reason, if they need to ask extra questions, which is absolutely fine, and then we find that information and give it, but the universal letter of assurance seems to be giving a standard information, human resources information to the organizations they require, which speed up the process.
And Jamie, I don't want to keep coming to you, but I do have another question for you. In terms of study teams and sponsors who may want support, how can we support those areas early on as well?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is around delivery, sometimes the study teams, so the delivery teams, are coming to us slightly too late. The study's already set up, it's already running. They struggle to recruit participants, and then they come to the DDT teams and agile teams to go, can you help? And then we think a bit outside the box and able to maybe identify more participants and things like that. A lot of the protocols that we get, however, aren't geared to being delivered in a community setting. So what we are trying to do is work more upstream with both our academic partners, but also our commercial sponsors, to be able to add in things that make it more acceptable to be delivered in community. So things around sample processing, logistics, the number of times participants might have to come to a site or be visited, those things. How much, can we do as much as we possibly can at one visit rather than across multiple visits? It really is key to come to the research networks at that stage when protocols are being developed, to look at how we can support that delivery where there isn't the traditional lab and pharmacy infrastructure around it. So we're working with some of our pharmacy colleagues, where we're looking at community pharmacies. So can they be dispensing some of the IMPs, investigational medicinal products, as part of drug trials, so that we can go collect it, and then we can go and take it and deliver it sort of off NHS site, as it were. That was one thing. But of course, all that has to be written into the protocol, or then amended so that we can do those elements.
And I think that leads me quite nicely onto the big question of the day. From what you've been just saying, Jamie, it's a big state of growth and evolution and refining and fine-tuning. But I'm going to bring Kirsty in for this one. Kirsty has been teased the entire time, so this should be good. Looking forward, what do we need to do to improve research delivery in this way? It's the big question.
Sure. So I guess, well, no, I don't guess, I know. This is a call to arms, really, a call to action for all of those in industry to sort of make the most of us as the national DDT and agile workforce, and leads with those skills and expertise to come to us early. There's definitely been an increase in co-designed work, and we need to be able to sort of build on this, collaborate further with more stakeholders, sort of via our established local and national NIHR, like PPIE groups, who already, again, have great contacts, and we're working on a number of different work streams that will be able to support this. And this will provide that greater sort of depth and meaning to the study and the outcomes. Sort of more specifics would be, again, as sort of Jamie's mentioned, looking at the protocols and the need sort of for them to be looked through a different lens and right from the beginning, either through that sort of early engagement with us, because we've built lots of networks already, and we've been engaging with multiple groups, both underserved, but also those that perhaps don't traditionally access healthcare services in the way that many of us traditionally do. But also utilising staff differently. So within the hospital setting, there's that sort of traditional doctor-nurse sort of team with a few, additional sort of staff, MDT members. But actually, we need to think about sort of having that suitably trained research team member, so that opens up more opportunity for more staff in different settings to sort of really engage in that research and become part of it and support it and champion it for their sort of local community. I think there also needs to sort of be more autonomy for PIs. It used to be very sort of site specific, whereas I think we're moving away from that now, either as sort of super centres where things are able to be coordinated from that, almost sort of more pick site management, but also just making it a little bit more user friendly and adaptable, and perhaps having a bit of a hybrid model. So whilst you might try and reach more people geographically, that might not necessarily work for those, as Jamie mentioned, with illiteracy. So actually thinking, well, we've got this piece of technology that will help capture lots of this data for the participants to enter themselves, but actually you're then missing out a whole other group of people over here. So drawing in on that and actually having sort of multiple ways of gathering that data and being even more inclusive. I think that would help. That would also, by having our engagement first from the beginning, I think that would really streamline the delivery on the floor, and things would move a lot quicker. And I think just generally being able to bring the research to the people by, again, bringing us in, we can bring those local communities in to all engage and co-produce on some vital research projects, and sort of, taking it out of the hospital setting. So I think the earlier we can engage, the better, and our sort of offer, I guess, is that there's this single point of entry through for the NIHR. So if you want to talk to any of us in the National DDT group, for us to be able to support and advise, then we would recommend going through the industry team in the first instance.
I think there's really two key points that I want to touch upon there. And Jamie, I'd like to bring you into this. It's the idea of it's generally outside the box. Think outside of the box being the clinical setting. The clinical setting that we know is incredibly busy and incredibly resource, not stretched, but the resources are finite. How can embracing more delivery settings help to reduce that burden on hospitals and ensure that more people can access research?
Yeah, I think I think there's a place for secondary care. So we're talking about NHS, so secondary care, hospital settings. We will always need that. I think we will always need people who have a disease process going on, goes to those settings, participate in research, and what I think. Sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. It was bound to happen to one of us this afternoon, wasn't it? Yeah, I think looking at the demographic of the that's required to be recruited from for a clinical study, and actually where are they? So if we take a study we were looking at the other day, where we wanted so many people over the age of 65 and then so many over the age of 75. Why then can't we take that into a care home setting? So rather than expecting those 65-year-olds, 75-year-olds to be admitted to hospital or have some contact with acute services, walk-in centres or any of that, actually let's take that study, let's use our link. So we've got the Enriched network, which is enabling research in care homes, and we can then drop that study into there. They can review it and go, actually we think it would benefit from this, this and this, and then the agile teams can come in and support them to recruit their staff, recruit their residents, and actually we can then deliver that trial into those settings. So it's thinking about more, I guess, from my point of view, that demographic. Where is the demographic that you're wanting to recruit from? And I've got a brilliant example of this. We had an EMRI conference, which is Ethnic Minorities and Research Inclusion conference the other week, and we took a sampling study, so bioresource, which is a huge genetic swabbing study to creating a big biobank in the UK, and we got 25% of the delegates over the day, and we were literally in a room opposite the conference in a hotel room, and the response is overwhelming. So again, it kind of reinforces that if we're thinking outside of the box, the location doesn't always have to be clinically focused, because people are willing to take part. It's just we need to go to where they are. And I suppose to answer the question in a roundabout way, that takes the pressure off those clinical services, because we're not trying to take up or fight for an outpatient room. An outpatient departments are hugely stretched at the moment, trying to create clear backlogs and things like that as a result of the pandemic. So trying to get a room to see somebody for a research appointment is incredibly difficult. We can do that in a different setting. That relieves that pressure from them, gives the research participant a better experience, and it ultimately retains them into the study for longer.
I think just to kind of develop that as well, we need to be working more collaboratively still and working across organisational boundaries. So it doesn't need to be all in one place, doesn't all need to be in a hospital. Why can't it be the things that they maybe have to have in a hospital, maybe some investigations or scans, etc. They can have that in the hospital, but then why can't we partner with a GP practice or with a care home and go out and do the visits, somewhere else that is more convenient for the patient, where it's maybe just a blood test or, vital signs check or data collection. So I think that's one of the things we can do to try and, increase inclusion even further is start working kind of all together as one infrastructure, one integrated system.
Fantastic. And are you finding that companies are open to conversations about new settings? Is there an appetite within the industry as well?
Yes, I would say so. So recently we in Wessex launched our new research buses, and we had both Roche and Moderna there, and they sort of really positive and positively received everything that we were sharing there about the opportunity to sort of reach more of the local community, and they've been in touch since then to sort of start talking to us a much earlier stage to see what's needed in order to be able to write those protocols to suit those settings and those demographics.
Fantastic. Now we are going to move on to our audience questions. We've had a lot of questions come in, so we want to make sure we get through as many of them as possible. The first one we've had come in is from Emma Goodwin, who is from the National Institute for Health and Care Research. Hello. Who says, this sounds really great, and it's easy to get excited about the direction of health research. There are a lot of changes coming from the NIHR with a move from LCRNs to RRDNs. Is the expectation that this will be a more prominent within the new structure, or is there a risk of losing out on the good work that is going on to support these settings? Who wants to take that first? Go on then, Kirsty.
Go on, Kirsty.
Absolutely not. We've put a lot of hard work in the last couple of years, us as a group, and we've achieved some really great successes. And if anything, we've got the motivation and desire to continue and really build on what we've done so far. So I think it's going to be bigger and better.
Anyone want to add anything to that?
Just the same. Yeah, we were, I'm not sure how much I can share. Maybe, so we were basically asked as a group of the Agile team leaders to support the development of the new service. And that is going through its kind of, I guess the best way to describe it is a tender process or a review process at the moment. So as DDT leads, we were very mindful of the way in which the Agile teams can work and support research delivery in the future as part of the new network structure. So the research delivery networks, but then also locally as the regional research delivery networks. So again, the regional research delivery networks should all have an Agile team in some shape, which again is to support that delivery across those regions.
I can add a bit more from my end. We all have been involved, like Jamie said, in the development side of the next phase when we are going into RDN. One of the big things is about working together across regions, across the country. And I think that's one of the strong points of the RDN, because there is no competition between the regions. We will be working together, 4 of us, and there's actually 15 of us across the country as the DDT leads, and all the teams as well. We will look at where things are going well. So if things are going well in Yorkshire and Humber, we'll be asking, oh, what are you guys doing differently, and vice versa. And I think that, I'm very excited about that. And that is a real game changer where quite a lot of places and too many occasions think maybe there is a place and there's a reason why things can be competitive. But there is a real appetite to work together and make the projects and this RDN network a success. So very much looking forward to it.
I've noticed that the word team has come up quite a few times in this whole panel so far. So it seems like the focus really is on utilizing the team members that you have and remembering that it is a united front to produce this. We have another question in from Linda Collins, who's from the University of Oxford, who says, working outside the hospital setting and using more community-based options, how do you manage contracts with the sponsor?
I can take that one because we've just been having conversations around it today. So what the all of the LCRNs are hosted organizations, so the NIHR is a non-legal entity. So we all have a host within the NHS. And they take on a lot of that function, those functions. So the governance functions, the HR functions, finance, all of that side of it on behalf of us. So recently we've had agreements around data sharing put in place by our host and then the sponsor who was running the trial. Unfortunately, there are different levels of kind of engagement with that, but again, we can work around those restrictions as part of the Agile teams by sharing that knowledge amongst ourselves, and then again, capitalizing on the networks that we've got in order to be able to facilitate different ways of working, but also those conversations to start as early as possible. So again, we're working with a different CRN to get them that kind of contracting, if you like, set up in a different way to be able for them to run that trial.
Fantastic. We've had a couple of questions in for Jay. Jay, you're very popular. Can you tell us more about where we can find information on the universal assurance processes?
It was originally developed from Northwest London Clinical Research Network. For all the direct delivery team leads, we have shared all the information through the National Leadership Group. What we can do is we can provide the information and we can share that through this platform if that's any help. But Northwest London research website, they should have all of those details. And personally, I'm happy to provide that too if there's a way to do it.
Fantastic. Okay, that answers all of the J questions in one, so that's very helpful. Let's move on to a question from Joe Verity, who's from NWEH, who says, are you using more e-consent and e-data capture, and are many sponsors using EISFs? I can see Jamie nodding, I can see Joe nodding. Joe, let's go to you first.
Yeah, I would say we've definitely seen quite a big increase in studies that are using more decentralised methods or remote methods of data capture. I think that also kind of stemmed from the pandemic as well. So there was the big panoramic trial that was, very well published, which was fully decentralised. There's other studies that have mirrored that model now, and there's some hybrid. There's quite a few hybrid studies that even in our team at the moment we're working on, where consent is done maybe over the phone or a video call. You maybe do have to see the participant once or twice throughout the duration of the study. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more studies that are using this kind of hybrid model. And it's demonstrating success. It's convenient for the participant, but it's also convenient for staff as well.
Jamie, did you have anything to add to that?
No, not really, just very similar. We ran a social care study looking at fostering services, and all of their participant interactions were done virtually. So the interviews, the follow-ups, all of those things, it was all done virtually. And as Joe said, because that was the most convenient way to do that. Again, working families and things like that. It ran really, really well. Staff were trained how to kind of conduct those interviews remotely, and they take those skills into other trials that kind of offer that way of working as well. So it really is a good way to engage with those participants.
Brilliant. We've got time for a couple more questions. So the next one is from Emily McDougall. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, from the NHS, who says, can the direct delivery team do pre-screening and screening? Does this include non-HS or primary NHS care settings? Joe, you're nodding again. Oh, Jay, let's come to you. We haven't heard from you for a while. Let's go to Jay.
Sorry, did you say Joe or Jay?
Short answer is yes. It's an absolute yes, we can do. We do that across a majority of the work is happening around GP surgeries, primary cares, where they are able to do the pre-screening on electronic databases, things like System 1 or EMIS, or direct delivery team members have the right access to patient data at that stage. So they are able to pre-screen according to study needs. And some of the projects actually need that secondary care screening by a clinician. Obviously, that depends very much on the study or the project. The ones they are able to do the pre-screening and screening and able to contact the patient until they actually say yes to the study and consent. So quite a lot of those pre-screening and screening work is already done by the direct delivery team members across the country.
Fantastic. We've got a question in from Emma Goodwin from the National Institute for Health and Care Research saying there's a lot of talk about supporting the delivery of research in out-of-hospital settings. Does this expand to the governance side of setting a study up in these settings? Jamie, I can see you nodding.
Yes, it has been tricky to navigate, and that's probably one of the biggest hiccups, shall we say, in study setup. So we have to normally have a site per study, and that site generally takes on that governance element of it. So they may issue capacity capability statements, those kind of review processes. We then, and the best way to describe it is almost subcontract to that site. So they then get the help from the Agile research team or the direct delivery team. So that can, as Joe said, be lots of different organizations involved in that process. It really does depend on the activity being undertaken and the risk of the research project or the trial. So they are all reviewed, they are all looked at as to whether or not the sort of sufficient governance process are involved. We sometimes involved our integrated care boards in that decision as well for those out of hospital areas. We've also worked with, certainly in Yorkshire and Humber, some of our non-NHS care providers to provide that governance function as well. And that was around some of the prison work that we do. So they look after the governance, and we then are providing that research delivery on their behalf. It's a difficult question to answer in under 10 minutes, unfortunately.
Well, you are mentioning we do have 10 minutes left. I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll see how we're going for time. We have another question from Emily McDougall, who says, I've worked in a global role, and in many countries, decentralization is becoming the norm. The UK seems to be lagging behind in this. Thinking in a patient participant-centric way, how much of the UK governance system is preventing this becoming a more prevalent model? I am thinking about the idea of the delivery team as part of the direct care team. I know this is part of a wider problem, and I'm wondering how you have managed this.
I can try and answer that one. I think that there are difficulties for decentralized models around access to patient data. So as Jay said, there are various different systems utilized by GP practices. So EMIS, System 1, that can often be in one region. So there's no universal platform for the GP records. That is becoming, access to those is becoming more universal, and some of them are being integrated with some of the hospital records. And because the direct delivery team sit within hospital trusts, we can have access via that route. You're right, the direct delivery teams aren't part of that traditional care team. And some of the HRA stipulations are that access without permission, it must be by somebody from their care team. we've navigated that or got over that hurdle by having those honorary contracts with some of those GP practices. That is very clear on what access we have and why we're accessing that information. The fact that we are then accessing that information for the purposes of research without explicit consent to do pre-screening is then delivered to that patient population for that GP practice, either via posters in their practice, text messages, notices on their website. So some way to inform those people that that activity is going on. And it's almost then run as an opt-out. So people would need to get in touch with their practice to say, I don't want my information to be used from that. We use an awful lot of GP practices as patient identification centers. So getting the wording around those text messages and alerts that they send out, things is really key as well. And again, using those as a prompt for people to get in touch with either the practice, with us, or go through the Be Part of Research websites as well.
Brilliant. We have come to the end of the session now. So we have one last question for our audience members today. I'm just going to start the poll now. It'll be in the same place as the first one was. And the question is, in terms of widening access to research for all, how optimistic are you about changes in the clinical research landscape discussed today? Not at all. There are many challenges still to address. Quite, we are heading in the right direction. Or very, I'm feeling inspired to innovate. While we are awaiting these results, I want to say thank you for joining us today. I think end messages for what we've discussed. Clinical research has changed. The UK and the NIHR are at the forefront of this, and we're looking forward to working with sponsors and other stakeholders to improve research. Would that be about right? Got nods of agreement. That's fantastic. We've got poll results coming in. Keep those coming in now. Don't forget, you will be able to watch this session on demand after the recording has completed. Right, let's take a look. In terms of widening access to research, we only have 9% who say not at all. There are many challenges still to address. 68% say quite, we are heading in the right direction. 21% say very, I'm feeling very inspired to innovate. 69%, I think we all agree that we are heading in the right direction, but there is still ways to go. Right, in the meantime, I think we do have time for one more question. So I'm going to ask you, it's from, I'm sorry again if I butcher the name, Sajni Haria from the National Institute for Health and Care Research, who says, what would be needed to be done for clinical trials to be more inclusive for pregnant women? It could diversify the pool of patients and allow commercial companies to recruit more patients, but obviously safety is a major factor. Anyone want to take that with the last few minutes?
Earlier they can engage people like us. It's probably going to help their conversation, because what we feel is that we have collective experience and knowledge in this new setting, because research is new in relatively new in the community or non-settings, but we have doing this for a number of years now. So as a collective group, we are able to provide support to commercial companies and anyone who is looking at these type of studies. So early you engage like Joe and Kirsty and Jamie said earlier, then we can provide those inroads, the things that you need to be aware of. So from the right get-go, you have all of those areas open and your pool of people are wider. And hopefully that will lead to better outcome from the project.
It links back to the idea of engage earlier, and we can go from there. Thank you so much for taking part. Thank you to all of our panel for today. Thank you so much for joining us as well. Thank you to the team over at #PPWebinar on Twitter for live tweeting along with the session. If you have any follow-up questions or anything that you would like to know, please do take a look at the resources on your screen now. We will also tweet the a still of this, so you'll be able to have those for your records as well. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you to the panel. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and we will see you next time for the next Pharma Forum webinar. Thank you very much.